Okay, everybody. So for this project, we're going to take this bearded character and we're going to create sort of like a sci-fi sort of composite. It's going to end up looking sort of like this. So I'm going to walk you through the process of adding these various effects. And then you'll go ahead and you'll get to do them yourself. So I'm going to make this a little bit larger. I may zoom in and zoom out. To begin with, what we're going to need is an image from Pixabay. It's linked on the class website, and so it's this little spacecraft. So we're just going to go ahead and copy that image, and we will paste it into our document right over here. Now, you'll probably have to save it to your My Drive and then do the place and embed, but either way, we will then take our move tool and we will turn on show transform controls, and I'm just going to make this a little bit larger. Like so. You could have downloaded the larger resolution version of it as well if you wanted to, but that's step number one. I'm going to turn off the transform controls as well. Now I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to grab my brush tool, and I'm going to do a big soft edged brush. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller than that. No, yeah, right about there. Soft edge. Remember, you can press shift brackets to have a soft edge. So that's a soft edge versus a shift right bracket. You know, that would be a hard edge. I don't want that, of course. I want a soft edge. And what I'm going to do is choose a color orange. The hex code that I have is FFAE00. You don't have to have this exact shade, but just something sort of in the orangey family. Go ahead and hit OK. And I'm just going to hit one time over each of these sort of jet rocket things right here. Now, it doesn't look great at the moment, but what we're going to do is change the blend mode. And so I'm going to go down to normal here, and I'm going to look at either overlay soft light, or I think hard light or vivid light is the one that we're going to end up wanting. For this right now, I'm going to go with hard light. I kind of like the glow that it casts. Okay, so now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make this guy blend in with the background a little bit more. So I'm going to click on his layer right here. I'm going to go to adjustments, and the first adjustment that I'm going to add is a brightness contrast adjustment. I'm just going to lower the brightness a little bit to make him see. This was like taken in the daytime, but now we're in dark outer space. So I'm going to lower the brightness just a little bit, but notice it's lowering the brightness on everything. So what I'm going to do is right click on this and go to create clipping mask. That will only impact that specific layer. So you can see like the extreme example of light and dark like that. So I'm just going to darken him a little bit, and I'm going to add another adjustment layer, this time a hue saturation adjustment layer, and I'm going to make him sort of bluer so that he blends in with sort of like the dark bluey purpley sky. I'm going to colorize it, and I'm going to then go to hue and slide it into the blue family over here, which I think right around here. I just want him to blend in with the background. Again, I'm going to make this a clipping mask, and I'm going to lower the opacity of this particular layer because I don't want him to be like totally blue. I just want him to have like blue, undertones, if you will. One other thing, I feel like the sky is a little bit too vibrant down at the bottom, so I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to grab my gradient tool. I'm going to use the color black on my foreground, and I will go black to, if I go, right here, if I click on this, I'm going to go to basics, and then I'm going to go black to, or foreground to transparent. Hit OK, and I'm just going to go ahead and drag a line up here. That was not exactly the angle that I wanted. Something like that. And then in the back here as well, just a little bit. And then I'm going to change the blend mode. And I think what I want is, let's go with multiply. And then I'm going to lower the transparent, or the opacity. So it's just darkening it a little bit, about 65% or so. Okay, let's go back to this guy. We're going to create another new layer on top of the hue saturation adjustment. All right, so I'm going to create another layer right here, but I'm going to again create it as a clipping mask. And what I'm going to do is go back and I'm going to grab that color orange that I used before. All right, so FFAEE00, like so. I'm going to grab my paintbrush, and now because this is set up as a clipping mask, I'm going to create this orange that's sort of on the edge of his hat, like so. And then on his face, as if he's being illuminated by the spaceship. Now, obviously, that looks way too extreme. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change my blend mode. I'm going to try, I think overlay ends up looking the best. But you can go and you can navigate through and see some of the other ones. Maybe you'll make it a little bit more extreme right on this part. Sort of think about, envision where the light would be hitting as much as you can. And illuminate his face just a little bit more, not quite onto that side of his nose. So I'm going to use my eraser tool, letter E, soft edge brush. I'm just going to sort of get rid of it on that side. I'm just sort of painting back and forth this this color on him. I sort of like the way that looks. I'm feeling pretty good about that. All right, so now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add some overall effects that are going to sort of tie everything together. So on the top layer, I'm going to press Control-Alt-Shift-E, and that is going to create a layer from all of the layers beneath. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Filter, and then Blur Gallery, and then Field Blur. And the Field Blur is going to pull up a separate window. And what it allows me to do is to put down these pins, and then I can determine how blurry or not that part of the picture is going to be. So I want him to be in focus. So I'm going to put a couple of pins. I'm going to lower the blur to 0. And then I'm going to move this one over here. And 15 is way too extreme. But if I lower it to like 5 or 6 right there, you could sort of imagine what a camera would do is it would have the foreground, the shallow depth of field nice and in focus, and then the background would be out of focus. And so that's sort of what I'm trying to emulate right here. I want this spaceship to be like 1 pixel of blur, because we sort of want it to be in like the midground, if you will. So we don't want it to be out of focus, but we also don't want it to be like super crisp, because that's not what would happen in a photograph like this. And we'll continue to blur it just a little bit, come into here about 1 pixel. I'm going to make this one over here, since it's further away, this part of the ship, I'm going to make that like 2 pixels. And then I'm going to continue to click around in like the stars over here, and I'm going to lower that to like 2 pixels. Like so. Add a couple more on his beard because I want that to be nice and crisp. You can also sort of position it into other places as such. This is his shoulder. I'm going to put that maybe at 1 pixel just so that he's more in focus here and not quite so in focus a little bit further back. But either way, I'm feeling pretty good about how this is looking right now. Make sure that this is here, and move this there and hit OK. So you sort of have to eyeball that a little bit. All right, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a camera raw filter. So you can see that that has sort of changed it. You know, the difference is this and this. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, and I'm going to convert this to a smart object. This will allow me to be non-destructive in what I'm doing. I'm going to go to Filter, and then I'm going to go to Camera Raw Filter. And here's where I'm going to really tie everything together by using various colors or color changes in the Camera Raw Filter. Let me resize this. This will open up a separate window, you may recall, from Graphics 161, depending upon when you took it. And I'm going to cool the picture. I'll just add in a little bit more blues. I'm going to increase the highlights a little bit. I'm just going to lighten the light things. I'm going to increase the shadows just a little bit as well. Increase the whites just a little bit. Now here's where I'm going to increase the texture. So the texture is just going to make everything look like a little bit more texturized, but it's going to be across the entire picture. So even though I've got a photograph and a computer generated image and then like a photograph of the sky, it's going to bring it all together. I'm going to boost the clarity. I'm going to go sort of extreme in this regard. And then you can play around with some of the other settings as well. I'm going to dehaze to the right, and I'm going to increase the vibrance, which is going to make the colors and the saturation just a little bit more extreme. So I want this to be sort of like a sci-fi poster, so I feel pretty good about that. Now I don't like the green that's coming in here, so what I'm going to do is go to my color mixer, and on the greens I'm going to push them more towards this yellowy orange. So like this would be very green, this would be the opposite direction. I also want the oranges to feel a little bit redder as well. I think that looks a little bit neater. And then I can play around with the reds as well. I sort of like them toned down a little bit to the left. The blues, I'm going to push actually towards the aqua. I think that creates a pretty cool aesthetic. And then you can play around with the purples a little bit as well. Some of this is just playing around with it and testing things. And then in color grading, I'm going to take the midtones. I'm going to push those to the red just a little bit as well. Right there. And then I'm going to go down to effects. I'm going to add a little bit of grain, and that'll be universal across. So it'll look as if it's, you know, it'll tie together a little bit further. And then I'm going to add a little bit of vignetting down to the left. That'll sort of create like the shadows that would appear from the hood of a camera lens. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit OK. And so now we have taken our picture that was, it didn't really go together all that well, but it's now tied it together even better. And so you can see the difference between this one and this one. You know, a little bit different. It took a couple of different approaches, but still that same sort of effect. All right, good luck.